Ooh. You know what else is getting kind of crazy? I'm going to point out. Have you looked at our Discord?
What?
We got
41 people.
41 people offline, 3 people online, and then there's the 2 of us.
It's really weird. TJ Miller.
I said we got some names in here too.
Oh, yeah,
I
Sean
know
Mays.
Michael Dorinda is in there.
Matt Lance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
I think
cool,
I think
cool.
Jose Borges is a big name too.
You know, the
Fiddy Spence. Who's Fiddy Spence?
Patreons. What?
Who is that? Fiddy Spence. I recognize the name.
I don't know. But the Patreons are supposed to be getting a handle, and I don't see the handle being added to them. So I've been adding them. I've been adding friend of the show to the Patreon people, but they're supposed to also get something that shows that they're Patreon. And I actually created a Patreon room that I was hoping that I could get them to join automatically. But I don't. It's not setting up correctly for some reason.
Huh.
So I don't know. I might have to start manually inviting Patreons to the Patreon room.
Benefits.
See, they're
the benefits due thing isn't showing Discord.
What? It should.
Laughed out loud.
The $1 one doesn't, but the $2 and $3 one does.
Yeah.
Or 2 and 5.
But when you go to the benefits page on Patreon, it's not saying.
But yeah, the benefits page is only showing the stickers. I think that's just physical benefits.
Yeah, I think that's benefits that we owe customers.
Right. So I don't know. I got to play with it some more. I'm trying to get it so if you're a Patreon, you get dropped into a special Patreon channel that we'll talk about during the show. Because I'm really starting to think we need to start doing something. If people are going to contribute on this level, we need to up the game for them.
I agree. I was saying that when we first set it up, and you're like, nah.
That's not what you were saying. You kept talking about goals, and I'm like, that's not how Patreon's set up. But let's talk about it on the show. See, we're wasting all the show content.
What Discord thing are they supposed to get?
So there's a.
All right. You're right. No, show.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Anything we would like to discuss beforehand?
No, I'm good.
Oh, we're live streaming, so. All right. Okay. All right. I'll kick it off then, I guess. What are we? 125. All right. It's Thursday night. Time to get ugly. PHP Ugly episode 125 is on air. I am your host, Eric Van Johnson. And unfortunately, with me tonight is only. Oh, I said that poorly. I worded that poorly.
You worded it wrong.
I meant to say I only have Thomas Wright out tonight. Oh, I mean,
Unfortunately, Thomas is here tonight. No, that's not right.
Yeah. Fucking Thomas.
It's wonderful to be here.
Are you sure about that?
It is. This is one of my few reliefs from teenagers. It's been a good week though for teenagers. It hasn't been all horrible crying, screaming drama. There's been a lot of youthful, bubbly happiness.
Oh, you gotta embrace those moments, man. They don't last.
Really do.
Often.
Like those times when my daughter wants a hug, and I know as much as I would appreciate messing with her, if I did that, then she would start crying and run away. So I just have to give her a hug and tell her how much I love her.
Well, that's probably the better way to go.
Probably.
I don't miss having teenagers. My daughters have moved beyond their teenage years. They're still a pain in the ass. They're still a headache, but they're getting a little bit more focused in life. Matter of fact, both my daughters are very involved with youth support groups, and they're actually starting to get a little taste of what it's like to have to put up with a teenager day after day, drama after drama.
That
And
must be fascinating.
My one daughter came to me and just listening to what she was, venting and just kind of relieving some pressure of just trying to mentor multiple teenagers. And I just sat there and just smiled and like, yep. Yep. I know what you mean. But it's good. I'm proud of them. Happy with what they're doing. Don't miss having teenagers in the house, though. What have you been up to, Thomas? What are your life regrets? You know what? I have a life regret. I just realized.
We're opening with regrets?
I really regret that I didn't buy a Taco Bell franchise in Canada because they are going to blow up.
Why do you think that?
Because cannabis is legal in Canada.
Well, why not? Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of bummed since you mentioned it that I didn't buy a cannabis dispensary in Canada.
Now Taco Bell is where it's at, man. I'm telling you.
I've told you about the place here in Colorado Springs that's just for stoners.
What's that?
It's called Fat Shack.
Fat Shack? What's a Fat Shack?
Oh, it's terrible. It closes at 3 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. And I'll give you a sample of the menu, one of the more popular items.
So it's a restaurant.
Yeah. The fat sandwiches are really where the problem starts.
Well, John's not on the show today, so we can talk about all this unhealthy stuff.
So the fat jersey, it's a regular like sandwich style bun, like a brioche Subway bun.
Mm-hmm.
Cheesesteak, chicken fingers, mozzarella sticks, French fries, and honey mustard.
This is what's on the sandwich?
This is what is in... This is between the two loaves. It's a horrifying... I'll put this picture up here and in the Discord.
I say put it in the...
This goes in the Discord. This is a picture of one of their sandwiches, and you can tell that somebody invented this while high. The Fat Chance, jalapeno poppers, cheesesteak, chicken fingers, French fries, and buffalo ranch. Fat Hangover, scrambled eggs, cheese, sausage, bacon, French fries, onion rings, and ketchup.
Yikes.
Yeah, and then they have a deep fryer in which they'll deep fry anything that you bring them. And if you go past there at 3 o'clock in the morning, you'll see the place is full.
Full with what, though? I mean, I don't understand.
Really stoned people.
See, I don't get that. Like, people get stoned and go out to eat? Is that a thing?
Oh, no, they also deliver.
Oh, there you go.
But yes, after many lengthy conversations, I found out that people who regularly smoke weed firmly believe that it's okay to drive.
Oh God!
Instead of drinking, if you're drinking, don't drive. But if you're smoking weed, they say they're fine. I wholeheartedly disagree. But when I was 18, I did do it once, and I broke the speed limit record on the low end. I went the slowest anyone's ever gone on the 805.
Oh man!
Horrifying experience. One exit away. Just one exit on, one exit off. Must have taken 45 minutes.
Oh dear. Ugh.
But yeah, people smoke and drive in Colorado a lot.
Yeah, we don't encourage that.
No, I totally don't.
Don't alter your consciousness and think you can drive, please, under any circumstance. So no John today. No John to keep the peace between you and I.
He's was in San Francisco or something.
He's out in the wilderness somewhere trying to find peace and Zen like state or something. I don't know.
Some other family adventure time thing.
Yeah, he wants to be with his family. Yeah. I on the other hand, the wife and I try to get away from our children. We left them and went to the East Coast last week, which I
saw that. You posted the most disgusting picture I've ever seen on Facebook.
The blue crab?
It must have been 30 pounds of crabs.
It was a bushel. I love blue crab. Oh my! I can't even begin to tell you the pleasure I got out of sitting down for about an hour and a half and just picking blue crab.
See, and that was the part that made it gross too, was that it was not the picture itself. It was that I knew you, and I knew like that picture represented a 3-hour eating period. But by the end of which anyone who observed it would be sick to their stomach.
Nah. You don't get a lot of meat out of blue crab, man. You've got to work for it. So it's a process, I tell you.
like the pistachio of meats.
I did find out something weird today. One of the things we did when we flew back east was, so we flew into Baltimore, Maryland. And if you're not familiar with the U.S. in the East Coast specifically, it's very different than the West Coast. And on the East Coast, you can travel through several states in a day. I mean, no big deal. So we flew into Baltimore, Maryland, and the very next day ended up driving to Steubenville, Ohio. And that took us through 4 states: Maryland, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio. And Steubenville is it's just this border state on the border of Ohio and West Virginia. I mean, it's not very... If you're from Steubenville, of course, they can tell you every fantastic thing that's happened in their city, but it's not like this crazy city like New York or anything of note. And we went there because that's where my wife's mother lives, and we went to check up on her, see her. My wife's my mother-in-law. I keep saying my wife's mother, but my mother-in-law. I've got to come to grips with that at some point. I've been married for 30-something years. So, but my mother-in-law, she had like some family heirlooms she wanted to hand down to my wife. So we got all that organized, and I posted on Facebook today because we got the dishes, a china set is what my mother-in-law had given to my wife, and we had taken it to the UPS store to have them shipped out here. We got it in, and I just make mention of the fact that we'd gotten it from my mother-in-law in Steubenville, Ohio. No big deal. And John messages me. He goes, "Have we ever talked about Steubenville?" I'm like, "Why would we do that?" Yeah, why? Turns out he has a stepbrother who's in Steubenville. I'm like, what are the chances? Like, seriously, what are the chances of that being a thing? So yeah, John has relatives in Steubenville. And I enjoyed Steubenville. I enjoyed the East Coast. I have to say, the older I get, the more I appreciate the East Coast in Maryland, where I'm from. We went to some really nice areas in Maryland. We were back. We had a few things to do while we were back there. One thing we did was go to a wedding. And it was just at this gorgeous mansion, and it was beautiful. But yeah, I'm appreciating the East Coast. I always did. I always appreciate it. But
isn't that how it works, though? Is that in your middle age, you appreciate the Northeast coast, and then as you get older, it slides further south until you're in Florida?
Florida. I've never been a fan of Florida. I just haven't.
You're not 80 yet.
That's true. And I haven't spent a lot of time down there. I've only been down there maybe a handful of times. So, and I've never been to like Miami or any of these like beautiful Gulf Coast cities that they have. So I might be missing out on something. I don't
Better
know.
check them out while you still can.
I'm okay. I'm okay. But what else has been going on? So the Patreon thing. We were talking a little bit before the show, and Patreon is becoming a thing. I'm not sure what I had anticipated when I started I did the Patreon.
I can already tell you what you anticipated. You anticipated 0.
I did.
Because you're blown away by the 3 that we have.
I anticipated you saying, I'm going to make a Patreon page one day, and me telling you, oh, no, we have one. Nobody cares. That's actually why I put it together. You had ruined that surprise by following through with it yourself, and I had slipped up. I'm like, I thought you had found the fact that I had created a Patreon page, and I mentioned to you in the chat, yeah, I went ahead and deployed that. And you were confused because you were showing me the Patreon page you were working on. So that whole thing kind of, fell to the wayside. And so we went ahead and released it. And like you said, didn't expect anybody to care about it. But you know what, Thomas? People care.
There are a few nice people in this world who do care.
Well, either nice or drunker than we are.
That's it. It must be nice because they're able to use their computers.
So you guys didn't talk about our first Patreon. And I felt bad because I was listening to the show and I had already gotten the approval to mention them on air. And you guys weren't mentioning it because you didn't get the approval. But just across the board, so you're aware, I've talked to everybody on there and everybody's okay with us mentioning their names. But our first Patreon was actually Buttery Crumpet, who has been lurking.
Crumpets. Plural.
Well, he's a crumpet in Patreon. So I don't know, but yes, you're right. He's Buttery Crumpets in Discord.
And he's Buttery Crumpet in Discord. He's got both.
Oh, does he have both?
Yes.
So I wonder if
you think that's where Patreon's getting? We're having trouble getting Patreon to bind correctly to Discord.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we were talking about. So Patreon people are supposed to be getting a special handle and being added to a special group in Patreon in Discord, and that doesn't seem to be happening. I'm not sure why. See, yeah, Buttery Crumpet isn't either. I don't know. I must have done something wrong there. I'll have to check that out.
I checked. I thought you might have, and I checked, and it didn't seem to be wrong.
Yeah. So Buttery Crumpet has the honor of being our first Patreon. We are Patreon. I think you're a Patreon on Patreon.
I think it's just patron.
Patreon, yeah. So we have, but we have had actually a couple more people join our Patreon. Ankush Thakur. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
Why are you guys?
What?
You guys are so bad. Ankush Thakur.
Ankush Thakur.
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 Tha.
All right, that him. He's a Patreon, and
it might be pronounced Anush, which is common in
Anush
Thakur.
Anush,
but it might be.
Are you in Discord?
I thought you cleared this with everybody, and now you're saying you don't know the name.
No, I did. I messaged them on Patreon and asked them. Look on their messages.
Just don't know how to say the name.
I didn't say I did. I can say the next name. You want to say it, or you want me to say it?
Great, Gregory. Gregory, right?
Gregory Valentine. Right? Would you say that's Valentine?
Yeah, that's Valentine, I think.
Yeah.
Or Valentine or Valentine.
Yeah, I'm going Valentine. So yeah, a couple Patreons out there. So I don't know. I mean, I think we need to do something. I did say on a previous show that I wasn't ever going to lock things down to Patreons like videos and stuff. But I don't know. I'm starting to rethink that now. I mean, I feel like we need. I feel like we need to up the game for Patreons. I don't know what that is yet, but I don't know. We got to do something, right?
I feel like we should up the game for all of our listeners. We've been doing such a slapshod product for so long. We're just so used to just getting it out on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, and
yeah.
Although I have kept myself pretty strictly to getting it out Tuesday afternoon now.
Which is amazing to me. What do? You don't edit till Monday? You don't edit on the weekend or something?
No, my weekends are too busy.
Jeez. So Patreon people, I don't know. Give me your ideas. Message us on Patreon. Let us know what you think would be cool. I'm going to come up with something. I have some ideas, actually. So let me, one idea I have, if you're interested, Thomas?
Go on. I'm listening.
Geez, that was a mistake. You're always giving me a hard time about, like, I always go out and buy, like, all the gadgets and things like that.
Okay, where's this going? Right? Eric's hand-me-downs?
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
The garage sale of Patreons.
No, I was thinking about doing like ugly technology and doing some videos of like the stuff that I buy and
like video reviews and stuff. That'd be good.
I don't know about a review, just kind of like show my latest mistake or like I got something that's been like a complete game changer here at the house. You want to know what it is?
I do, but I'm not a Patreon.
It's not. I can't even begin to tell you what a big deal this has made around the Johnson household. So
is it deodorant?
It's that's hurtful. That's hurtful. So we have several different devices here, right? I have a Galaxy S8, which has the USB-C connection. My wife has the S6. My kids have some of the Samsung J series. They all have the micro USB. I have a iPad here, right? iPad takes lightning cable, right?
Yep.
So we have all these stupid cables around here, and depending on what device you have, you can only plug into certain ones, and it's kind of a pain in the ass because, like in my car, my wife and kids, they can't use Android Auto because I have my cable plugged into it. And for them to use Android Auto, they have to like switch out the cable and stuff like that. I came across and purchased, where'd it go? Right here. This. Check this out. I'm going to hold it up to the camera. I'll put a link in the
the magnetic stuff?
The magnetic stuff. This has been such a game changer. So we have these little adapters now we put into our phones. I have the USB-C one here, and it just magnetizes and starts charging just like that. Not only that, but so I take that off, and then I have my iPad, which has a Thunder in it. And
Thunderbolt, sure.
Yeah, just connect it, and it's charging now as well. And not only that, but these things, they don't only charge, but they let you transfer data. So in my car now, I have this on my Android Auto, and my wife can now connect to my Android Auto, and I can connect to my Android Auto. We don't have to change out the cable, and it works. It works perfectly.
That's pretty slick.
It is awesome. I'm actually buying more cables because we're like replacing, and I'm buying more of these the little nubs.
Yeah, that you leave in the phone.
Yeah. Now on the S8, it actually stands out a little bit because of my case. So you see there's like a little bump here. But I'm sorry for those listening to the podcast, but it does protrude out a little bit at the bottom of my S8. But my wife and kids, they all have these cases on that actually have a little cushion down there. And and depending on the old cable that they used to use, it wouldn't even charge because it wouldn't like fit in there correctly. So now they have these little nubs. The nub fits in there, and it actually sits almost flush with their case. And then the magnet connects, and it does a fantastic job. Huge game changer, and they're cheap. They're like, I think I get a bundle of 3 for like it's like between $20 and $30 depending on what tips you need on them. So if you need the micro USBs or the USB-Cs, but they're on Amazon. They're like between $20 and $30 for 3 of them, and it's brought peace to the house because now you just pick up a cable, you magnet it attaches to your device and starts charging.
All right, there you go. This is your preview of Eric's Tech Corner.
Ugly
for
technology
our Patreons.
So yeah, I got some more goodies coming in the mail too, by the way. So maybe I will do that. Maybe I'll add that to the Patreon channel. I feel like I wouldn't be robbing anybody of anything.
No, we can put some of my rantings on there. I'm not sure if you saw my rant today. It was excellent.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You talking about the Slack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple pages of text about the intentional corruption of news media.
Yeah.
Just weird.
So have we talked about the new DiegoDev office?
There's been some discussion about building the shower in there, and
okay, yeah, we have talked about that. Yeah, so that's happening. Maybe I'll set up a little video thing in the office so I can do little tech reviews correctly.
You caught last week's episode.
I did. Everything you said. Everything.
After some at-length ranting about ownership of personal information and stuff like that, we had a Patreon user, Frontal Nougaty, link me to
Discord, you mean?
Yes, Discord listener, Frontal Nougaty linked me to Tim Berners-Lee project, which is this kind of centralized store for your personal information called Solid.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, do I not understand what they're putting their money into. They've got a company, like an official corporation, and then there's Solid, which has like a team, but I can't tell what it is that they do, and they have sponsors, but I can't really tell what it is that they're doing. And then it's just sort of like 3 or 4 white papers, and that's it.
Okay.
And then there's...
Sounds very informative.
Yeah, and then there's like a community version where you can create a pod, which is where you store your personal data and control who has access to view it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it looks like a... Well, I mean, I can actually look at the source code. So it's 100 lines total of Bootstrap. No...
What are we talking about here? I mean, are you getting somewhere with this conversation?
I just don't understand what's delaying this whole concept. It's just moving nowhere.
Okay.
It's very upsetting. I really like my idea from last week. And to say that Solid exists and somehow does it just doesn't. Solid just really doesn't do anything yet. And they've been working on it for years. And I read some article that said that, like, yeah, it's, even though it's open source, it's been adopted by literally 0 people. Like, oh yeah, that's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a little bit of a different rant. Do you
go
care
for
to
it?
hear? I'm not sure where this begins and where this ends, so I'm gonna talk through it. You talk about something that is security. That's probably something you should be doing. That doesn't get adopted very heavily. Let's talk GBG for a second.
GPG?
GPG, yes. So I've been a GPG user for years, but you really don't get a lot of utilization out of it because
It's a two-way street. It's only people who also use it.
right. And I really thought Keybase was going to change that and make it a lot easier to start using GPG because that was kind of one of their initial goals, but it really hasn't changed. But on the Mac, it was always easy to use GBG through a thing called GBG Suite, and it was an open source project. They took donations, whatever, but I I went to upgrade my GBG Suite and got
GPG.
prompted.
Killing me.
What am I saying?
GBG.
Oh, GPG.
GPG.
I got prompted that GPG Mail, which is like one of the core components of the suite, it allows you to use it within Apple Mail, is no longer free. They're charging for it. So you get.
That's how I felt about Synergy. The Synergy did that. Synergy went closed.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about it, and I actually don't use Apple Mail, so it won't impact me that much. But I don't know. I mean, I guess there's nothing to stop them from doing it for the whole suite. But I don't know. It was a little disappointing to see that.
With my whole outrage, because I mean, our episode literally 2 years ago about Synergy, where I just ranted, changed my opinion on it.
Okay.
I understand now the need to charge for some stuff like this. I understand that once you start charging for it, then that compulsion to make it less open starts kicking you. You start feeling like, well, if we close source more of it, then they'll have to pay us money. I empathize with that issue. One or two developers maintaining something, I can understand how it happens, but I still don't excuse it happening. I still don't think it's the right way to proceed if your project needs support and isn't getting it.
Mm.
It's a bummer when I see stuff like that happen, but I keep looking at what Red Hat has done, where they will buy an open source project and turn out some miraculous improvements on it.
Mm-hmm.
They bought a deployment and server management infrastructure. What was it called?
Ansible?
Yeah. They bought Ansible and then created something called Ansible Tower, which if you've ever used it, it's just like, oh, wow, the future is here. If you're an Ansible user and you look at Ansible Tower, you just go, oh my God, they revolutionized things. And that's cool. But when Synergy went closed, they didn't revolutionize anything. In fact, they advertised features 2 years ago that still don't exist as
Such
enterprise. So if we pull up Synergy,
and this doesn't need to turn into a rant or attack on Synergy. I was just curious what they were. It's not a big deal.
I have no problem ranting. You know that.
Well, yeah, that's part of the problem, though.
Simless, that's the name of the company now. One feature that got requested was audio streaming between two devices to share a single audio output. They had 3 tiers. Now they only have 2. And okay, so what they were advertising for Synergy Beta. Oh wow! So they've removed clipboard sharing between 2 computers and added that as a pro feature. So they're actually downgrading the base feature now. And they've removed all of the stuff they said they were going to add that they never got around to.
Lofty goals.
Yeah, and they all fell apart. But yeah, they just removed anything that they never got around to. Huh. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
So I don't like the way they went around things, but whatever. I understand it happening. But yeah, I tried out Solid, which is the Tim Berners-Lee project, and there's literally nothing to show. There's once you register and get your profile set up, you realize that there's nothing. There's nothing to set up. There's nothing to integrate. It's basically an address book, and that's it.
What was the man? What was the service that there used to be a service out there that allowed you to share your address and phone number and all your contact information and allow people to, it was like a LinkedIn thing where people could subscribe to your contact information, and as you updated it, they would get the updated information.
Oh, I don't know what this is. That sounds just like an LDAP server.
It was very similar to that. And oh man, if anybody in Discord's listening to this show and knows what I'm talking about, man, this had to have been early 2000s, probably. And man, I can't remember what it was called. Yeah, shoot. But it was a terrible idea. I mean, it was like putting literally all your personal information out there for people to subscribe to. I mean, I think the thought behind it was that you would curate who actually had the ability to see it. But
it sounds like it just eventually turned into Twitch.
Twitch?
People, yeah, where people just screw addresses. People could just watch you all day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've thought about that. Have you ever thought about that?
No.
Doing some. No, I wish I was better. I
wish I had criticism from friends who I interact with once a week. I don't need criticism from strangers who I interact with every single day.
I used to watch. As a matter of fact, he's in our Discord. What's his name? Willie C. Willie C was like building his entire business, and he was like streaming the whole thing. Like he was a consultant who was working on the random projects, and he would hack his way through these projects, and he'd just stream it. That's how I got to know him, actually, as I start watching him. And he was doing some Laravel stuff, and I was giving him some direction and helping him out with it. And
speaking of Laravel, I'm so glad you brought it up.
Okay.
The big news of today is Laravel Telescope just got announced.
What? Telescope? I don't care.
Which is the wrong name. It should be Laravel Microscope.
That's a good point. Yeah. Telescope. Well, they're going with the whole space theme, right? Nova, Telescope.
Oh, really? That never occurred to me.
I don't know. I'm making that up. I don't know if that's actually true.
You might be right.
I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm not part of the inner circle.
There's very little information about what this thing is, except that it's.
Well, he just announced it. So Laracon AU is going on, and I've been told that I name drop too much, and I noticed that I'm one of the few people who actually does do this, because they rarely mention us, but friend of the show Michael Dorinda is he's the North Meets South podcaster and Laravel News podcaster, real great guy, fun guy. He's the one behind Laracon AU, and it was fun because we did Wave PHP this year. I mean, completely different scale, right?
It's a little bit,
but we were sharing some notes along the way, so it was fun, kind of corresponding with him on it. But they have Laracon AU going, and they got Taylor and basically the whole Laravel crew would come down and present, which was cool. And I guess Taylor announced Telescope today, which I had not heard of anything new being launched at AU. So,
well, now a few people were in on this. The big person I saw that knew about it and was working on it was Freak. No, Spady.
Yeah? Well,
oh no, I'm sorry.
Same place.
Freak and Spady both working on this behind the scenes.
Spotty, that's Freak's company. So yeah, it's like me and DiegoDev. It's one and the same. Oh, so that doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's a Laravel package generating maniac. So
yeah,
but I haven't seen anything of it. I actually have no opinion of it. There's other Laravel debuggers out there, so I'm not sure what it brings to the table. You have opinions?
Oh, I have huge opinions about this.
Why am I not surprised? Let's hear them.
Well, okay. To start off, what it is,
it's bloated. What?
If you use Laravel debug bar or Clockwork,
I'm a Clockwork fan. Yeah,
it's essentially that, except that it logs to a service instead of logging it out as JSON straight to the browser plugin.
Okay.
Or
what service does it log to?
It logs to itself. It writes a record that says, here's the request and all the activity that occurred, or here's jobs that are running, here's logs and exceptions, here are scheduled commands. The nice thing about this is that you can use it for production stuff and get authenticated user information, so you can know that an authenticated user is at this level and is getting this error and et cetera is happening. I don't know why you would run such a debugger in production.
I was going to say, are you saying this is meant to be run all the time in production?
He claims that it's safe for production. That it's a minimal impact, only 1 or 2 queries per page fresh. It's pruning.
That would be a pretty big deal if it is.
If it is, but I mean, again, the thing it's providing you with, this is really for the development side of things. This is for how you develop, and that's fine. That's fine.
It's for debugging, though.
It's a cool thing. It's nice. I don't have any problems with its functionality whatsoever. I have enormous problems with the fact that it's just like Horizon. It is a library that binds into Laravel, overrides existing service providers, and injects itself into the code base. It does not run as a client server. It just runs as both monolithic things in the application. I compare it to Horizon because I know how Horizon works. Horizon jumps in place. It has a route that you can't define. It has minimal authentication. It doesn't account for anything as far as multiple domains or an admin domain. It just exists wholly on its own with very, very, very little configurability. And it only works on a single server. If you're running anything load balanced, it doesn't at all work with that. If you're trying to control...
And if you're not aware, Horizon is the Laravel package to manage queues.
Right. And it gets a really deep dive into the jobs. It's not just telling you job started, job ended successfully. It's telling you a lot of details about how long the job executed, et cetera, but it's doing that by overriding the job class and adding start-stop times to it, and it's reading the class. If you try to install Horizon and monitor a queue that you don't have all the jobs or classes for, it doesn't know what's going on.
So you tried using it?
I tried using it and I ended up being told that we are going to use it, so I shoehorned it into an application, but it was a major pain in the ass and it does not work for the environment that we set up.
Mm.
It barely functions as an attribute of us tweaking our environment to make it fit. But if you were doing any kind of load balancing on your jobs, anything that required multiple instances of your code on multiple servers,
Mm.
then it would be lost. It would have no idea what was going on and where, and there's no way to configure it to have a client on a remote device. It only works on the one server that's on with the cron jobs that it can watch.
Mm.
And my biggest issue is there's no published route. You cannot tell it to not publish to the Horizon directory. You have to fork the project to change which route it's accessible on, which is like, come on, you wrote Laravel. You know how to do an artisan config publish. Why didn't you just do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because routes don't have a config publish. Routes are not considered dynamic like blade templates are. So expect that to come in Laravel 6, by the way. Publishable routes.
I think I'm going to be spending the weekend upgrading one of our applications to the latest, greatest Laravel. The new one we're working on. Been trying to. It's weird trying to keep Laravel, Vue, Tailwind, and trying to keep them all on the latest, greatest versions. Man, it's a lot of work. There's effort involved in that.
Really. I'm getting more and more inclined to just do Lumen for all my projects instead of Laravel.
Yeah.
Just
well,
because.
Why stick with? I mean, why wouldn't you go with something like Symfony or I just read an article in PHP Architect, which if you're not a subscriber to PHP Architect, you should consider it. But I just read an article on Zen Expressive, which sounds very much like the new Symfony approach, where everything is dependency injected, and you start with a very minimal framework.
Yeah, you just start with the dependency injection, and then you include everything after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's weird because the article I read in PHP Architect, the setup seemed bulky. They had you creating the directories and stuff. I'm like, man, I can't believe there's not an easier way of doing this. And of course, I go to the Zen Expressive website, and yeah, it's very, very simple. Composer installs Zen Expressive skeleton. So I'm not sure why the article took the long way around, but it was maybe they were just showing all the different components you could add or something. I don't know, but
yeah, I'm getting more and more inclined. I mean, I'd love to move to Symfony, but the short answer is I mentioned it to my boss, and my boss said no. And it wasn't like a conversation that me and him had.
Mm-hmm.
I just said, "Hey, what do you think about Symfony?" And he said no. And I said, "Well, it's really cool." And he said, "Yeah, I know, but no, we're not. We can't, because we've got a large base of junior developers in my company."
Yeah,
So
I get that.
For me and my boss and one of the other senior developers to switch over to Symfony, not a huge time sink, but
No.
for a lot of the other people who just edit blade templates and just know enough to tinker around and fix issues, moving to Symfony would be a huge time sink. So
yeah, for sure. And I still have kind of reservations about the whole dependency injection model, where you start with the minimal kind of the micro framework, and you bolt stuff on, because I don't know, I would be concerned about getting we talked about bloat right before. I would be concerned about those projects becoming bloated with, well, let's try this package for the database. I don't really like how that one works, or I like how that one works, but this developer likes how this package works, and they installed this package for
you're
database.
the boss, though. You can just say no.
Well, in my particular situation, yeah, but I'm saying in general for developers and projects, I can see like if I come into a project, a Laravel project, right? I know I'm dealing with Eloquent. I know I'm how I'm dealing with the routers. I know what's there because Laravel is a very opinionated framework and it's structured in how it does things and where you can go outside the box of Laravel and there's packages for like Doctrine and things like that. In general, you have a pretty good idea how it's going to be implemented.
But
You walk
that was the big part about my rant about this, though. Earlier tonight was that I was talking with Kaylin on Slack, and last week there was a big kerfuffle about Taylor saying there's no Laravel way to code, right? But with the introduction of this system, which tracks models, logs, jobs, crons, workers, it tracks everything, and it's able to do that because it hooks all of the Laravel ways to code. It hooks into all of the parent classes for all of the different components. So it's 1 week later from saying you don't have to code it our way, he releases a project where if you decided you didn't have to code it his way, the whole project wouldn't work.
Well, the package wouldn't work, right? The telescope package.
Yeah, but the telescope package works if you follow the Laravel way of coding, which is a thing that he says doesn't exist.
I didn't see that tweet. I don't know if you linked to it or not, but I didn't see it. But
I think it was a big topic last week's episode.
I would agree with you. There's definitely a Laravel way of coding, a Laravel approach. I'm not sure what he was saying. I mean, it is ultimately PHP coding, so you don't have to adhere to it. I mean, you don't have to.
It's any coding, you don't have to adhere to the framework that you just downloaded. But the point of the framework you just downloaded is to adhere to the coding standards in the framework. That's the point of it.
I agree. Yeah. I'm agree with you.
I just thought it was such an intentionally naive statement, and then the next to have a package released the next week that wouldn't work if you followed his previous instructions just struck me. It's like, yeah, once you hit a controller, you don't have to do anything we tell you to. It's like, okay, yeah, but then I lose all the features of the framework. So there you go. If I'm logging things without using the Laravel log helper, then guess what part of the new Laravel tool doesn't work? Like, of course, there's a Laravel way of doing things. You got me all ranty. I blame you.
It's not that difficult to do. And trust me, I do walk on eggshells around you. Try not to get you too worked up.
Yeah, I think there might have been one point where we were all hanging out, and I started ranting about something at Wave PHP, and John just tapped me on the shoulder and said, "That's enough." I think when I said Taylor's name specifically, I said something like, "You know what I think about Taylor?" And John just said, sort of, "Yeah, there's a lot of people here you don't know." So thank you, John, for keeping an eye out for me.
So what are you working on? Anything fun? Any development stuff?
I wish. Image processing, man, that's just always terrible.
Yeah.
I've been trying to bump up my code quality lately, take it to the next level.
How are you doing that?
I have a tendency to build somewhat monolithic methods in my controllers. And this is ever since CodeIgniter, where CodeIgniter said, here's how you get to your endpoint, and then you put all your stuff in your endpoint. And so I just sort of built monolithic applications out of one page where I'm doing 10 queries and I'm doing math and business logic, and then I'm passing it into the view object and rendering the view object and passing the view object into the response object, and realizing that I'm not taking full advantage of object-oriented principles. I've definitely got code where I've got nesting much further than I should. So I'm taking small tasks and trying to practice my best techniques in those smaller tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking at core functionality of Laravel. I've been trying to dig a little bit deeper after I found out that the IronQ plugin was failing because 2 arguments got switched on the contract. Upset me, but I also felt responsible. Even though I was not responsible for that.
So you're still managing the IronQ package?
I am for now. I feel like I can never really let it go.
It's good. You're a good man.
Now it got resolved. It got resolved because I received a message on GitHub from somebody who basically did a pull request as an issue, where he pasted all of his code to fix the package in the issue text. And I was like, if he'd just done it as a pull request, I didn't have to change a single word of what he pasted in. If he'd done it as a pull request, I would have just pulled it and said thanks, because it definitely fixed the problem. But yeah, a huge shout out to the guy who did that. But people are still using it, so I feel compelled to still support it. I said I would take it over and support it. I know what it's like to try and use abandoned packages.
Mm-hmm. Hacktoberfest? Are you doing any coding for Hacktoberfest?
God, I should be. I feel so bad about it.
I am such a terrible open source developer. I've never considered myself an open source developer. I've always considered myself an open source, kind of person. But man, like I'm such a bad open source developer contributor. It's insane.
I'm having trouble just finding the project, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
you've got yours. I mean, you're kind of tied into the Laravel collective, right? I mean, that's nothing but open source projects.
I suppose so.
But
there's
I keep saying I'm going to do it. I keep saying this year is the year that I'm going to, not only in October, but that I'm going to attach to an open source project and keep contributing in it. And I go back and forth. I either have the bright idea of starting an open source project or finding one that I'm very enthusiastic about and contributing to it. And ultimately, I don't end up doing either thing. I barely have time to code during work. I've become such a manager. My opportunities to code have been reduced to like updating README files. It's so frustrating. I mean, I did like the last thing I did was I believe I talked to you guys a couple of weeks ago before I left for the East Coast and mentioned that I got Laravel running on AWS Lumen.
Right? Not Lumen.
Lambda.
Yeah. We talked about that in the last episode because we're curious about that, but now John isn't here, so he doesn't get the answers he wants.
Well, I haven't had an opportunity to get back to it either, which is frustrating because I'm like, I actually have business requirements for me to, if I can get that working the way I want it to work, would be beneficial to us and our clients. And for me to have the time to do that is becoming so difficult. And I don't know who's to blame. I don't know if it's me, like me being
John
lazy. John, if the guy can stay out of the hospital long enough, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like my day is packed from beginning to end, but I know in reality it isn't. I know that there are moments throughout the day that I'm watching a video or something and I'm not coding. But I just seem to be in meetings after issue. I do a lot of code review. That's pretty much my entire day right now. I feel like it's code review and approving PRs. But
Do you think like, yeah, when I retire, I'm really just going to write a lot of open source code?
I say that to myself all the time, all the time. And
Move to Florida, blue shell crabs, coding all day.
Yeah, maybe I'm just not that good of a coder because I see people code and you see people like Adam Wathan and some of these people who stream their coding sessions.
They're professionals, though. Oh,
We're
shit.
professionals, Thomas. God damn it.
Well, no, I look at the
I
look at
feel
the
like
Laravel code base because, like I said, I've been digging into Laravel's core code base, and it's fucking great. There is so much good stuff in there where you just go, "How does that work?" for 5 minutes, and then once you realize how it works, you go, "Wow, that's so fancy." Like that is just, I'm really impressed. And then you go to the next line and you do the same thing over again. There's so much. It's so dense with brilliant technique. And that's never been my complaint. The quality of the code has never been my complaint. It's fantastic. And I want to reach that level, which is, I mean, like I said, that's been my project, has been, yeah, how do I sneak better code quality into my day-to-day life?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I find myself thinking of code for 20 minutes and then I write like 2 lines. It's like, I'm like, I need to flip that. I need to be able to code for 20 minutes and then, think for 20 seconds.
Yeah, you got my boss stuck on Stand Up Alice.
Oh, that's another thing that went to a paid service.
Never been brought up. But Stand Up Alice is a Slack chatbot that does daily stand-ups for your development team.
Mm-hmm.
And first off, not happy about it.
You're welcome. Why is she happy about it?
Because it's every morning at exactly 10 o'clock. It's like, hey, what have you been up to? And I'm like, I don't know.
Let's just wants to talk to you, man.
Just wants to hang out. It's been a couple weeks, I think 3 weeks, and I'm still not used to it because he implemented it the day that you mentioned it to him.
At Wave, yeah.
Oh yeah,
we're using Stand Up Alice.
Real nice.
So listen, I plead the fifth because I was opposed to Stand Up Alice. I was opposed to the whole logging your daily routines and stuff like that.
Well, I was there, so be careful how you lie, because I was standing there when this happened.
So I wasn't a fan of it. And through internal meetings at DiegoDev, we decided, hey, maybe this would be a good idea. The developers of one of the projects were like, we want to know what each other is working on from day to day. And so, we did some research, came up with Stand Up Alice, because I didn't want to do daily stand-ups. I didn't want to get on the phone every day, or I didn't want to send out a bunch of emails. Right. And I didn't want people to have to send out emails. So we found the Slack plugin, Stand Up Alice. And I'm like, all right, it does the same thing, like Thomas mentioned. It prompts the developers for what they had done the previous day, what they're working on that day. Well, it can prompt you for a bunch of things. It's customizable. What I have mine prompt the developers for is, what did you work on the previous day? What are you working on today? And what blockers are you having? What issues are you having that you need help with? With the exception of Monday. On Monday, it's different. On Monday, it just basically says, what are your goals this week, is what it asks. So, and the developers, I started with a very small group of developers on this, and they loved it. And I have to be honest, I enjoyed it as well. It made my visibility into what was being worked on a lot easier. So yeah, we used it for probably 2 or 3 weeks on one project, and I rolled it out to the whole team. It's always been optional. Nobody is forced to do it.
It's always been optional.
It's still optional, and I
Is
think
that,
the entire team does it.
hey, it's time for your stand up. What you doing?
What are
I
you up
don't
to?
I don't want to talk.
And we haven't there
Feel
again.
bad saying that. If there's a button that says I skip,
Uh-huh.
and I'm
And
not pressing that.
she rats you out when you do that. By the way,
I know, and I totally,
she's a
instead of
little
pressing that button, I
snitch.
just ignore her.
Don't trust Alice, man. She's a snitch.
Jesus. My point is that if I look at my boss's stand-ups, it's for the last week, any impediments in your way, his response was meetings. It's like, oh God, I don't want that. I don't ever want meetings to impede my development cycle.
But do you work? I mean, do you
No.
work on things that are dependent on other developers?
No, absolutely not.
So you kind of work in a silo, anyways.
Yeah, and that happened as part of being a remote worker when originally when I started, the rest of the office was on site, and I was given the title of senior PHP developer, which basically meant back end, back end, back end. So people will call on me to say I need this thing, and I'm so familiar with the code base now that that's a 5-minute job no matter what the request is. If it's coming from the front end guys, then it's just, oh yeah, here, now it's available. But it just, the stuff I work on, I had a really bad day this week where I was working nonstop, sweating, skipping lunch because things were too busy. And then Alice the next morning asked me what I worked on, and I had no idea.
That's me.
That's
totally me.
There was no ticket assigned to anything. There was a doc sheet that just said all of the listed bugs and stuff, and it's like, my response to Alice was the bug doc, which is a really unfulfilling way to boil down a 12-hour day.
Yeah.
Was the bugs.
Well, that's a similar problem I have with these timer apps. We have timer apps that the developers use so that we know what they're working on, how long it's taking them, and we again, it's an optional thing because if they use the timer app, they don't have to submit invoices to us. We just pay them off the timer app. So
this is Toggle for the most part, right?
It is Toggle, yeah. And I get frustrated with it because I want to use Toggle to understand where I'm spending my time through the day. But I realize it's like so many times I'm working on 2 or 3 things at a time, and I can't toggle it. I can't measure it. Like I'm in a meeting, I'm coding, and I'm addressing an issue, a completely separate issue on Slack. And I know that's a terrible way to work, but it's how I work. And because
I think that's just the higher level, though. I think when you're the boss or when you're senior level, you have to switch gears so fast. You have to be able to switch gears quickly. Right now I'm using Git Flow, and I've had days where I had 4 active Git Flow projects that I had to switch between. So like when I got the message that one thing was needed work, I would commit, push, or commit, pull, push, switch, start, and then it's like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for like 8 hours straight. You're just these 4 projects, you're working in all of them at once.
Yeah,
there's no way to account for that.
I wish there was I wish Toggle or there was a service like Toggle that would let me track the fact that I'm working on 3 different things during this time span, and then maybe it does some sort of algorithm that says, okay, you worked on 3 things for 15 minutes. I'm saying 5 minutes per thing or something. But
now, I have heard stories about the 70s and 80s where lines of code were counted and you were paid based off of that. But where that ended up falling apart was tracking down a 1-character bug in a 10,000 line program.
Well, and it also it goes back to the whole, why would you pay somebody by the hour to code? Because it doesn't induce good, clean code. I would write monolithic
it doesn't
methods.
even make sense.
Right.
You know, it's like paying somebody by the hour for a new car.
Mm.
You know, you don't care that this model, that this specific one that came off the line took an extra 3 hours because of some issue on the line. They're all the same new car. You should pay the same price for them.
Right. Right. Well, and there's no incentive if you're paying me by the hour, or if you're paying me by the line, there's no incentive for me to do it quicker or to do it with less code. Matter of fact, it's just the opposite. I need to add more code. I need to add more hours. So, because that's how I get paid.
When was the last time you had a project on an existing, you had a ticket on an existing project that took more than 1 day?
A ticket, like a problem that you're working on,
A problem or a new feature? Like if you had
a feature, a feature
new
happens.
feature.
Yeah, yeah. A feature can take more than a day for sure. Especially on the legacy code
Of your work or of the team's work?
of me specifically coding something.
Right. To the point where you hand it off to the next person. Because I haven't had a multi-day project in probably 6 months.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
it's been a while for me.
if I start in the morning, it really doesn't matter how big the feature is. If it's been well defined in the ticket, then it's probably going to be an 8-hour, 7-hour project.
Again, it really depends on the code base for me. I am fortunate enough where I have a strong enough team that wrangles our legacy code, and that's the one where adding features in it is a nightmare because you break things. There's a lot of testing that's involved, and I haven't had to code in that code base on a regular basis in probably a year, 2 years, maybe longer.
Yeah, so you're set.
Yeah, the code I've been doing with this client has all been proof of concept, greenfield, things like that. So yeah, I've been very fortunate in that sense. But again, the team that does work on the legacy code, for them to take a week or longer to work on the feature, we have a developer who's been working for basically months on payment modules, just changes to the payment module that the client has wanted, but the whole payment system is such a core piece of the code that it's not just a matter of going in there and adding a few methods and hey, I got these new features.
Yeah, that's
he's
true.
had to it's been a lot of work. So that legacy code, it can get unwieldy. So I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question.
We're terrifyingly long on time.
Are we? Well, we got a problem because Buttery Crumpets is asking us to recap the last hour, and he's playing the Patreon card. So I think we have to. I think we might have to go back.
Do we have a Discord status for played his Patreon card for the month?
As we stated, he was the OG Patreon, so he even has some additional pull with the show.
I've got stuff. I'm gonna open with not doom and gloom. I'm gonna open with PHP Terminal NES emulator. Someone wrote in Rust an emulator for the NES, and it did not take long for a developer to take that and port it to PHP. So now there is a 100% PHP native NES emulator that, according to the GIF on the GitHub page, is able to play Super Mario Brothers at roughly 7 frames per second.
Not sure why, but okay.
Well, did you read the code?
I did not.
It's real interesting. Like, it's real interesting. There's folders for the bus, the CPU, the PPU, and then when you get into them, they're just translations. They're just translations for how to move characters around in RAM. And it uses associative arrays to simulate RAM, and it just moves bits around the way that it's told to, because the NES was essentially a complicated calculator. It didn't do logic. It just did opcodes. It just did the most basic CPU level logic. So when you pull the whole thing up, you look at it and go, that's very little code for a functional emulator. There's the opcodes, which are, for those who don't know, basically the built-in functions of a silicon wafer. The opcodes file is a total of 292 lines. And that's everything that the system is capable of doing to run what are called mode 0 or level 0 ROMs. It's really fascinating to try and read, because without a lecture behind it pointing at each individual thing and saying, well, this is what that part does, like the constant of colors, which is just an array of hex code values that, yeah, when they get passed into certain CPU codes, get passed under the screen. And it's just fascinating stuff. I mean, I wish I could.
400 line switch statement in here. That's awesome.
So I really recommend people check out PHP Terminal NES emulator, because there's nothing stopping PHP from doing it. You can manage an associative array the exact same way you can manage RAM. So now you just repeat the opcodes that are part of the NES that are well documented at this point. It's to me, it's really fascinating.
What else you got?
Well, it's pretty downhill from here.
Oh.
The headline from ZDNet is around 62% of all internet sites will run an unsupported PHP version in 10 weeks. We are now at 9 weeks. They're not wrong.
No.
The PHP roadmap that we've all been really well aware of for a long time is going to end at the end of January. Or, I'm sorry, at the start of January. Nope. Middle. Smack dab in the middle. No, it's last year. No, yeah. Security support ends the 31st of December for 5.6 point star. So anything on the 5 branch, if you're not upgraded to 7.1, you will no longer get any security updates whatsoever unless you're paying for them from a third party. And that does encompass 62% or more of the internet at large. I find that pretty amazing. One of the big issues listed in the article is that WordPress refuses to upgrade their minimum requirements to 5.2. Refuses. The quote from WordPress is, as long as there is a single server running 5.2, we will support it. Which seems real dumb. I mean, just come on, WordPress. You're already such a problem. Why make yourself so vulnerable to even more? So that's not great. But then Bruce Shiner. Wow, I dragged the card and lost it. literally vanished.
Where the hell did that just go?
I don't know.
I saw you drag it.
It's
gone.
There it is. Found it.
Where is it?
Made it way into a random column. There's a research paper that Bruce Shiner decided to bring attention to, and this is a real scientific research paper that essentially said that everyone in America is now identifiable to a third relationship genetic match. Because of the number of people using genetics products on the market, so this is 23andMe and Ancestry and all that garbage, you can now be identified as being related to somebody else up to a third cousin. And in many cases, a second cousin. It is the conclusion of the scientific study is that because of the mass collection of data and because of how genetic data is automatically relative to other people's data, there's direct connections can be made from reading two separate strains to a result strain, which is not being directly read, that everyone's privacy is compromised. Genetic databases are an enormous threat to privacy just in the existence of them, not even in your individual contribution. Because if your parents both take genetic tests to find out their African American heritage, they have inadvertently tested you as well. And there is no way of eliminating yourself from that searchable index. You are just now in it. Pretty stark conclusion. It's worth noting that the Golden State Killer was found because of this third-degree match to a cousin. So, thumbs up and good stuff. I'm glad we found a killer. But these are databases that are owned by private companies, and they can easily start profiling people based off of genetic traits that they've attached to socioeconomic traits, and you don't want that. I was hoping John would be here so that when one of you said, "Who cares?" the other one could play the foil. But John is not here.
He is not.
Do you have any contribution
to your fear, uncertainty, and doubt and concerns? I mean, yes, I guess. I don't know.
I didn't prep you for it at all, so I don't blame you for a non-answer.
Yeah, I mean, how private should your DNA be? I don't know. I don't know. I haven't thought about it enough to care.
There was a weird time in American culture where we decided that based off of how television shows told us it should be. Where it's like, we realized that if a person throws away a cup in a public trash can, then the police can take it out of the trash and use it to identify our genetic sequence. But it turns out that was based off of stories that were produced by genetic testing labs to perpetuate the legalization of that kind of technique. Where it's like, it's all encompassing itself. That there hadn't been a legal precedent for that sort of thing until television said that there had been a legal precedent for it, and then they established a legal precedent based off of public's opinion of the legal precedent. Real weird. And I think that's sort of happening again with full genomic sequencing.
I mean, here's my issue with DNA. Well, I mean, I've got a few issues with DNA, but especially in the prosecution of a crime, DNA is such an absolute Like, oh yeah, no, your DNA was there. And with DNA almost being readily available to people now, and having somebody's DNA on a either planted by someone else, or like if I were to commit a crime, it would not take a whole lot for me to get like DNA from John. Like I could go to his keyboard, probably turn it upside down, shake, and get a bunch of skin cells and all
You
sorts
could
of
swab
stuff.
your own cheek and you'd get some of John's DNA in there.
So if I were to commit a crime, having his DNA with me and planting it, at the scene of the crime, seems like it would not be that difficult of a thing to do. And to have DNA evidence be such an absolute in criminal prosecution has always been somewhat of a concern of mine. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that's pretty overwhelming evidence, but do we know that they were actually there? I mean, I understand we have their DNA, but it's such a concern of mine. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, you didn't really prepare me for the discussions. I don't know.
I'll tell you that the Golden State Killer issue, when they caught the Golden State Killer, they basically found through 23andMe or one of those services that this person was related to this person that they had tested.
Right. I've heard of this before. It wasn't only the Golden State.
They had 100 people who were in the suspect pool because they were close enough to this person who had been tested voluntarily.
Right.
But then they had to go through that 100 people, and also they might have had a lot more than 100 if they hadn't gotten additional evidence. There could have been some genetic problem that would have led to it being tens of thousands of people. But they narrowed it down through a collection of they basically went to the guy's door and said, hey, your third cousin who you've never heard of wanted to know if she was related to the Apache tribe, and now we're pretty sure that you killed 10 people. And that's a weird jump. Like, that's a real weird jump.
Yeah. But if the science is there, man. I don't know.
The science is there, but the social science and the political science isn't there. That's the problem, is that the science can very definitively point to a person and say they did it if you read it the wrong way. But science is not meant to be definitive in that way. I got one last thing.
Oh, come on, man. That was doom and gloom right there.
It's one of your own tickets. It's one of your own tickets.
No, don't you do it. Are you doing FCC?
No.
What are you doing? No. All right. What do you want to talk about the Facebook portal?
Well, you tell me what it is, because this is your ticket, and you added it before I found out something about it. so you tell me about it first, and then I'll add my little flavoring at the end.
Right. So again, in this world of always connected Internet of Things, communications, blah, 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 Facebook has released Portal, which ties into your Facebook account and Facebook Messenger and allows you to do video conferencing with other people, just like iChat or Google Hangouts or Alexa lets you do. And as a matter of fact, and the reason I actually posted this, I thought it was interesting that Alexa is actually baked into this. So this is like a...
Really?
Yeah. This has Alexa baked into it, which was actually more appealing to me than the Alexa device that I bought. I'm like, man, I almost would have rather have this and get one of these for my mother, because what's nice about it is they don't have to stand in front of it. Like, they can initiate the call, they can move around, and the camera tracks them. I'm always looking at things like this with for things like my mother and my mother-in-law, her older people who need very simple technology, but will give us the opportunity to physically see their well-being. Like one of the things we did when we flew back east, as I said, it was to go up to Steubenville, Ohio, because we had not physically seen my mother-in-law in a couple of years. We've spoken to her on the phone, we've messaged with her on Facebook, but I hadn't actually physically seen her. So we wanted to make sure we saw her, make sure she was living okay. And I always look at devices like this because I'm always looking for that very simple solution where it's easy for them to use, easy for me to use, and the fact that it has Alexa baked into it was kind of an added bonus. I'm wow, that's pretty cool.
And I like it. This is the ubiquitous device of our near future.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is going to be in every home.
So what did you find out about it?
Well, there's a small issue. People asked Facebook, "Are you going to collect data to put ads on it?" And Facebook said no.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, Facebook came out and said, "Well, okay, hold on. We might not have been entirely honest through non-disclosure. What we meant to say was the device itself will not have ads on it. However, we will be collecting all data for the purpose of advertising on other platforms."
Mm-hmm.
Which is super uncomfortable to me because not only are they saying, well, yeah, we're collecting all of the ambient noise in your house and all of your conversations for the purpose of advertising, but we're also going to link it to platforms that are not affiliated with the device you're using. We're going to advertise on Google using your information. We're not just going to shape ads just for you. We're going to shape ads for a demographic that we created that you're in. It's scary. Because they had to come out with the criticism and scrutiny that Facebook is under. They had to come out and admit what they were going to do. And they basically came out and said, we are going to collect the maximum amount of legally allowed data, and we are going to use it to sell you things.
Mm-hmm.
And there is currently no restriction on the amount of legally collectible data.
So why do you think that they don't just give this away? Like, why wouldn't they just give?
No, they're gonna. I mean, that's the end result is going to be a total duplication of the cell phone market, where they're going to start giving us cheap phones, then they're going to start leasing us expensive phones, then they're going to make us demand high power phones, and we're going to have to pay for them up front. And then they're going to tell us that each new iteration must be had because it's so much better, but in reality, it's not better. It's a software update that they're just holding back on the older versions. The reason I needed to update my phone was because my software was out of date. The hardware was still good. And they're going to do it again. They're going to create a ubiquitous device that they give us for free, collects all our data, sells groceries back to us, and then they're going to start making better versions that we have to pay for.
I feel like I might need to order a couple of these. I don't know. I've been on the fence.
How much do they want for them?
Well, for the Portal Plus is $350, but you can get two of the smaller portals for around $300, $298. So you get two.
That is crazy.
$293. So that's
and
about $150.
It's a closed platform. You can't install the stuff you want on it unless it's been authorized by Facebook.
Well, that's the thing. Is like I wonder what like the music is. It just Spotify? I mean, is that your only option? That would be Spotify, because Spotify.
Well, if it's through Alexa, okay. So the music, they've got Facebook Watch, which is their own built-in platform, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Newsy.
Oh, where are you seeing this at?
Portal.facebook.com.
Yeah.
Yep, they've got it listed.
Where at? I'm looking.
I would say halfway down the page, but it's one of those dynamic pages where the stuff stays on the screen longer than it's supposed to.
I see it now. Yeah. Yeah, so it's funny. They have Alexa built in, but they don't say that they support the Amazon Music either. Which I don't know if that's assumed with Alexa or if that has
No, it's not. No, Alexa built in just means the voice recognition component can break it down into machine command. It's Bixby,
right,
Alexa, all those are just voice recognition.
Okay, so it means like the lights I control with my Alexa, all that stuff still works, but I wouldn't have access to Amazon Prime videos.
No. Alexa built in just means that it uses Alexa to figure out what you're trying to say. It doesn't necessarily mean that it communicates with anything at all. It just means that it knows what you're saying because of the Alexa AI.
So it doesn't even tie into the Alexa platform that controls like devices and stuff.
Right, because you could build Alexa into your application by buying access to the Alexa API, and it will return text when someone talks. Yeah, that's all. All it's doing is returning text when you talk.
Yeah.
So that's Alexa is being sold as standalone because of that. Bixby is the same thing. Siri, Cortana, those are all just language engines. Those just know how to speak English. They're not necessarily the services that are being executed by your commands. Those are based on the device itself. And it's totally locked down. I mean, why would I want something that I could build for cheaper that did whatever I wanted?
All right.
They are not. They're pretty though.
They are. And the Portal Plus, it rotates, which is cool.
Yeah, but it's $350. It's the price of a laptop without the keyboard. It's a 15.6-inch display, $350, front-facing camera, speaker, but no keyboard.
There you go.
Did I bring you down enough? Are you glad that we did this?
I'm always happy to speak with you, Thomas.
Oh, we are running so crazy long, though. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need to wrap this one up. That hasn't been our best show, but we'll blame John for that.
I blamed him for the last episode too.
Yeah.
His presence and lack of presence ruins a show.
You guys did good last episode. I'm telling you, I have no business doing this. I don't need to be here. You guys do fine without me. So, all right, that's gonna be it. I'm wrapping it up.
All right,
we're not getting anywhere here. That's gonna be what are we at? Episode 125.
That's terrifying.
We've been doing this way too long. All right, that's it. Episode 125 is in the can. I'm Eric Van Johnson.
I'm Tom Rideout.
Keep it ugly.
Keep it ugly.
That was horrible, man.
That was great.
Yeah.
No, that was a great episode.
I'm killing local recording.
Me too.
Streaming for a while.
For
Discord people.
The one thing I wanted to bring up.
Yes.
I forgot. I wanted to bring it up for the end of the.
I find it interesting that they have. Thanks, Buttery Crumpets.
Yeah, thank you, Buttery.
They make a big deal out of this camera cover. I'm like, okay.
That kind of makes sense because,
but it was clearly an afterthought. Like, if it was going to be that big of a deal, built it into the device. Like, don't make it something you. It was
trust that. Somebody found a picture of Mark Zuckerberg and his laptop, and he had electrical tape over his camera on his laptop. And this is not an old picture; it's a new picture.
Yeah.
And people started saying, if Mark Zuckerberg's worried about his front-facing camera on his laptop, I think we should be worried too.
So. I showed you this before, but at one of the conferences,
Yeah, I love those things.
Right, we got these little things right here. I looked at getting these made with the DiegoDev logo on it, and they're this little piece of plastic. It's like one company that does it. One main company that does it. That little piece of plastic runs like $3 or $4 each.
Oh,
and they want a minimum.
Dumb.
They want a minimum of 1,000 order for an order.
That's so I can 3D print that. I could 3D print that so easily.
If you do about a dozen of them. I mean, it's pretty thin and pretty soft plastic. I don't know how rigid your 3D printer is, but
the plastics can range from very rigid to literally rubber.
If you could print up a few of those, yeah.
You'll notice I didn't take a break in the middle of the episode.
I did notice that. Good job.
So bad.
Go hustle. I tell you what, I've got to not come across gadgets. That's my problem. I'm such an early adopter. I hate it.
This is going to be the fastest edited episode.
I mean, there's not a whole lot to edit.
Yeah, I'm just going to play it at triple speed just to verify that the content makes sense and syncs. But
oh yeah, I guess I should drop my thing in a folder, huh?
Yeah. Woo. I'm going to be consolidating devices here soon.
What do you mean?
Well, you know my... Yeah, see? Buttery. Raspberry Pis and Arduinos.
Oh,
I need more.
I
need more pies.
I am such an addict with the Raspberry Pis. I buy them. I have... matter of fact, I don't know what I did with it. I had my one sitting over here that I just updated this week. God, yeah, the Raspberry. I haven't gotten into the Arduinos.
Arduinos, it's a more niche use case. It's really for controlling lights, and that's it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the Arduino supplies enough power to the pin headers to trigger relays, which is what everyone uses it for. It's a programmable relay controller. And I've never seen Arduinos do a whole lot more than that.
See, with my Pis, I want to get to the level of like adding little components and boards, and I really want to get into soldering too. Like I want to have to solder something.
I tell you, man, I bought that 3D printer for $200, and that gave me all the soldering experience I ever wanted, and now I'm good.
You know, with us buying the office, like the one thing I've wanted to buy was a 3D printer for so long, and I don't have anywhere here in the house for it or a good justification to buy one. But man, I'm really thinking about buying one for the office.
Well, then, do you want to design the camera cover? It's super easy.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I want to get the camera cover, so
go to SketchUp.com. It's like a built-in browser. A SketchUp? What? That's not the right one.
Yes.
Is it?
Couldn't believe how expensive those damn things were.
What 3D printers? Oh, those cover-ups.
Those little covers. I'm trying to find where I found them at.
What is it? Wow, they totally changed since the last time I was on here. Yeah, so SketchUp, like it's just a browser plugin. Or not even browser, it's just a website where you can design 3D printer stuff. I'll trade you my printer for John's brew kit.
Oh, I was gonna make fun of Jan for that. I was gonna talk about how he talked about the fact that the whole thing about brewing is more about the time you spend with your friend doing it. I'm like, that's odd. I've never gone brewing with him, so that's weird that he should say that. Oh, jeez. Yes, you can buy a plain black one for $6. Maybe I'll just buy it.
Tinkercad, that's the one.
Buy 3 for 10.
Go to tinkercad.com. You can literally draw it. It's so easy.
Tinkercad?
Yeah. It's Autodesk's software.
Yeah, I'm here. Zoom tight. Zoom tight.
As I get older, my nose gets more and more fucked up.
Oh, I'm not fucking creating an account right now, man. It's too fucking late. Come on. C-Slide. That's the main company that creates these damn things. C-Slide. And yeah, to get custom ones, it's just a ridiculous amount of money.
That's dumb. No, I need I have my whole like piracy system where I've got
I've heard rumors.
I've got Usenet, and then I've got.
So I exaggerated all those numbers. It's about 286 each, but the minimum order is 100, not 1,000.
Oh, that's too many.
So it's still too many, but I completely exaggerated what it was.
Well, that's still $300.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, so I've got my whole piracy network where I've got Usenet, which is the service I subscribe to, but then I've got my searcher, which searches Usenet for content, and then I've got my downloader, which downloads the content, and that sends it to a unified storage area where my TV can read the content and play it. And I want to move the bulk of that work onto a Raspberry Pi. Because right now it's just part of my daily use computer. But my daily use computer, the last 2 components I bought for it have been high efficiency fans because it started turning off when it hit 100 degrees Celsius. So I bought one fan that fixed the CPU overheating, and then I ended up having to buy another fan because the GPU was overheating. And this thing is so close to dead. I mean, it really is. It's like a computer that lost its legs in the war, and I'm just putting it on a pedestal. But convincing my wife that the computer that she's never had to think about, because I've had it since we met each other, needs to be replaced is a real difficult sell. Because it's never occurred to her that this thing is even a thing. It's just always been there making a lot of noise. If I bought a mini fridge, it would be for brewing beer. So that still wouldn't work. I'd have to buy 2 mini fridges and explain that to my wife. My wife. My wife doesn't have work tomorrow because it's a school holiday, so she wants to hang out and watch TV with me. So I got to roll, man.
All right, man.
It's good talking to you.
All right, brother.
Oh wow, these headphones are almost dead. That's not good.
All right, Mr. Crumpet. I'm killing the broadcast.